Welcome to Framework. It's me, John, one of the hosts of Framework, and with me, as always, is the other host of Framework, Al. How are you doing today, Al?
I am doing great, man. We are here to talk about HBO's and Bill Hader's assassin Hollywood satire, Barry.
Yeah,
Is that how would you describe it?
well, it became much more difficult to describe this year, I think. Or maybe much easier. I'm not entirely sure, because I guess at the end of the day, it's a crime show. It is a crime
I
show
guess
now.
so.
And at this point, that lacking a better definition for it, I guess that is the umbrella I would put it under. That is where it is now. It is something along the lines of a Better Call Saul or a Fargo.
Yeah, well,
It's a little more comedic.
it is sort of this. We did Better Call Saul recently and talked about how that was sort of a holdout of the, white male antihero era
Right.
of prestige TV, and Barry really is sort of like a half-hour anti-hero crime comedy, which is a version of that type of show that never really existed. I feel like it was always
Yes.
1 hour. The better ones of the anti-hero shows were very comedic. I think that Sopranos and Breaking Bad could be really funny in their own ways.
For sure. You wouldn't call them comedies, though. And this one, I guess you have to call a comedy.
But yeah, but I think that's just only because it's half an hour long instead of an hour long, right? Like that's how the Emmys or whoever divided up.
Well, is that the case? I don't know. I mean, it's tough when you kind of this is one of those conversations that points out the fundamental uselessness of genre classification. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's just a way to arrange things. And this is I don't know. I feel like this one takes place in a more heightened reality than those other crime shows. I mean, they have their own version of heightened reality, but this has absurdity that kind of exists within the world in a way those don't, which means it's less serious, but it's not. It's so hard to explain.
Yeah, the satire element is a little more heightened than, I don't know. Well, like you mentioned Fargo, which is not a pure anti-hero show. It is more of a crime thing. It deals in like there are anti-heroes, but
that's also a comic world that is heightened as well.
Yes, it is a more comic world. Yeah. You're right. And the anti-heroes there tend to be not so much these, tormented, dramatic figures as more Coen brothers figures, ridiculous figures.
Yeah, sort of self-interested imbeciles.
Yeah, yes. Interesting. Or at least to me. The other thing, so here's a little thing to throw out here is Barry is just a bad title for the show, right?
It's not a great title, that's for damn sure. But at the other hand, like, what is the show about? What is it actually thematically interested in? And at the end of the day, is it even the character Barry? I can't.
That's
say.
The thing. It's not. It's not as like dramatically like really fixated on Barry as the fulcrum of the entire series enough to like support naming after him. The way that like it made sense for Dexter to be called Dexter.
Yeah, sure.
But Barry is, I think, Barry. The character Barry is less central to the show Barry than Tony Soprano was central to The Sopranos, or Walter White was central to Breaking Bad.
I don't think that was true in season 1 or 2, though. I think those were. I mean, you could almost say they were Barry character studies, and this kind of changed the show in a fundamental way. This new season.
I will stipulate that season 1, I would have to go back and watch season 2 to say exactly where the transition occurred. But I don't think that, like as you were saying, it's holds true for season 3.
Absolutely not for season 3. Like he's got one of the least interesting plots of season 3.
I kind of love him though. I mean, I don't know. He's weirdly more passive, even as he's still committing a lot of murders.
Yeah.
Or I guess they're maybe, are they murders? Are they manslaughters? He's doing more self-defense here. The people coming after him are.
He's still killing people.
Justified, but he's still killing people. Yeah.
He opens the season with killing a couple guys just because they were irritating him.
Oh God, that season opening sketch is I love that so much. It's perfect.
Yeah, it's good.
And then it comes back in the finale.
A bit.
It's all about that.
To what end? I don't know, but yes.
Well, the beginning sketch is him freaking out there in that purgatorial landscape about how there's no forgiving Jeff, and then uh,
Mm-hmm.
he is Jeff in the finale, and finding out that no, someone is going to forgive him, and he doesn't know how to deal with that. I mean, that is sort of the thing that this third season is exploring through the whole, Fuchs's whole revenge plan, which is to gather an army of the bereaved, loved ones of Barry's prior victims,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of sick them all on him. Uh, I mean, it's kind of great. There's something like comic booky about it. It's almost like the Kingpin hiring every, buddy that's ever felt slighted by Spider-Man to just sick 12 different supervillains on him in a row. Like low rent supervillains, none of which would be a huge challenge to him individually, but they're going. I don't know if this is a specific Spider-Man arc I'm thinking of, but that seems like something that happens in comic books from time to time.
No, that yeah, I get what you mean. The twist, of course, in this case is that the recruited army is ostensibly in the right here.
Yes.
that Barry is a murderer, and yeah, their vengeance is deserved. And I like that it does play with that, and that there's like the bikers, for example, are not good guys. They are bad guys that just happen to be after vengeance as well. But the widower and her son,
Mhm.
they're not bad.
It's kind of funny that the bikers are the least justified, and they're also the most like overtly villainous. They're the ones that like we can cheer when Barry shoots them down,
Yeah.
or Sally stabs them in the face, uh, and because they're not well, you know, ostensibly the biker, the lady is just justified as any of the other victims because her brother was killed by Barry, but she doesn't care about that. They are chasing down a $1,700 hot tub related debt, apparently.
So crazy. Yeah, like that's a fantastic scene that I mean, you kind of have to just lift out of the season and take on its own terms. The biker chase through the California the Los Angeles freeways is like
Fantastic.
it's fantastic. It's absurd. It doesn't make sense in reality. It breaks the show in some ways, but at the same time, it's just like a really really good action scene, and it does that by being kind of low rent with everyone making mistakes. Like there's not amazing stunts being pulled off. It's kind of seems to, despite being outrageously heightened, have kind of real world physics behind it,
That
and real world cause and effect. It's great, thrilling.
it is the sort of Coen Brothers vibe that we talked about of people making dumb mistakes,
Yeah.
amidst life and death action sequences. Um, the other thing about that is just so great. The thing I love about this show, maybe more than anything else, is just it's got a unique way of framing its action and things. It does interesting things with how it presents action, and not just action, because I'm also thinking of how they frame the sort of punchline of the car ride that Fuchs takes with Bunny Colvin there, and is going on about how he hears a story about how Janice Moss's father there had convinced his jailer in Vietnam to kill himself, and he's sort of poo-pooing that as we see like the police station with the officers waiting roll up outside of his window, and it's just a fantastic visual punchline for that whole sequence. The way that they do action too, like that chase scene, how you see somebody just sort of like fly through the windshield into the passenger seat next to him, but we never move from just being in the window next to Barry, seeing the inside of the car. We don't see that person coming up really
Hmm.
until they hit the windshield and fly through. We just feel gunshots or bullets like incoming and gunshots hitting without getting the sort of like traditional Hollywood gunshot sound effect behind them. Uh, it is in a way it's more realistic that you're
Yeah, it feels
you're on
like
the
it.
receiving end of it.
Hmm.
You don't hear the big blast and see them. I mean, maybe you see the muzzle flash as a tiny little punch in the distance, but then it hits with this different sound and it's very sudden. I don't know. It's a cool way the show has of presenting that stuff. It's not like really dramatically innovative cinema stuff. Like you know,
Well, it's a new way of shooting action scene, and not
yeah,
yeah, kind of a unique, original way of shooting action scenes that works. That is all to the good. And it's working with cinema language as well as feeling fresh, and that it's kind of crazy that that's happening on Barry. Like
Right.
it's great, and I think Bill Hader is responsible, at least as he's listed as director, for a lot of the stuff we're talking about here. Certainly for the bike chase episode.
Mhm.
He's doing outrageously good work as a director, if I understand what's going on.
Yeah,
Like he might be contributing more to the show as a director than as an actor.
I
It's
think he's really
it's
great as an actor on this show too, though.
he is
I
a great
mean,
actor. Yes. This has not been a great season for Barry as a character, I guess, but it has been an incredible season for Hader as a director.
I don't fully agree with you there, but I agree that it has been like more impressive on the directing side, sure. And that action stuff, I think it was sort of set in the first season that when Hader was doing less directing, so
Yeah,
maybe he's hewing to what was already established by other people. I mean, I'm not trying to take anything away from him.
he feels like the auteur behind the show.
Sure,
Like this feels like he is the primary creative force behind it, and I'm sure that's not entirely accurate, but he seems to be at least propped up as uh, the the main guy, and I'm sure everyone who is working on it is kind of working alongside him.
yeah. I mean, it's weird that it seems like increasingly over time he has become the auteur.
Yeah,
That if it didn't start out that way, like they're doing a fourth season and he's going to direct every episode of it, from what we're
crazy.
told.
I mean, he's all in
Yeah,
on it. Yeah, like he kind of, I guess, recognizes that this is a hit and it is an opportunity for creative endeavor. So I like that he's leaning into it.
yeah.
And I'm curious what that means, especially with the way this season ends. Like, what is this show now? I'm having such a hard time.
What was this show to begin with?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so the log line of this show is that Barry is an assassin who gets bit by the acting bug and decides he wants to become an actor,
Mm-hmm.
while still moonlighting as an assassin. And oh boy, that sounds painfully unwatchable to me, to my sensibilities, as a one sentence description of a show.
Yeah, it's certainly potentially very irritating. It wasn't though. It wasn't.
No, it's so not what I thought. Like, it's so strange to me. It is a very funny comedy and a very heightened comedy, said, but the action stuff is so much more grounded than I thought it would be. Well, I don't know. It's still stylized, like we were saying. It has a particular way of presenting these things, but that way of presenting things is almost more realistic than typical Hollywood, action language that we have internalized. It seems like it is a show about a former Marine who becomes an assassin and gets all kinds of wild shootouts. That they did it seems like they did more consulting with like people who had actually been in combat than most shows would have. Because
Seems like.
what I
Yeah.
was what I was trying to describe earlier about how like you see it all from like, it seems like you stick with the one person's perspective throughout a shootout, whereas typical like Michael Bay level action language says that you want to show us both sides so we understand where they are in relation to each other and what's cause and effect over here and there. But this, like I said, like it presents the sound effects in a different way. uh, we kind of stick close to Barry, not like it's first person perspective, but we're like over his shoulder. So maybe it's not just Barry, like maybe like or the part in this season where the Chechen guy is FaceTiming with Michael Ironside
Yeah.
and he is trying to give them a good like overhead shot of their
Wonderful sequence.
podunk
Yeah.
heroin operation, and then sees the Colombian hit squad roll up and the police roll up at the same time and get into a shootout. But we stay like at this FaceTime angle that he has gone to pursue. It's just, it sticks with one person's perspective in the action sequences more, uh, to a greater extent than most like typical Hollywood action choreography does, and that gives it an interesting vibe. Like unique may not be exactly accurate. I'm not know that nobody's ever done this before.
No, it's
It,
not completely original, but it's you're not seeing stuff like this most of the time. Like you don't see
yeah,
action scenes that feel this way ever in movies. Um, I think that I don't know. I feel like there is a little bit of Vince Gilligan Albuquerque Crime Show influence bleeding
yes,
into this too. Like that did show kind of different ways to shoot this stuff, different ways to focus on this stuff, and I feel some of that here. I feel some of that transposed over. and just it. I mean, it was a very successful thing. Of course, it's going to be influential in this way, and yeah, I mean, I think the tone of the show maybe owes a debt to those as well. So
One
it's
thousand percent.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's coming from what's come before, but it has its own vibe. It has its own personality that sets it
Yes.
aside. And I think in a world so consumed by different shows and different media right now, and I don't know, there are 1,000 shows right now. There are literally, like, if I made a short list of the shows that I wanted to watch and didn't in the last 2 months, even, it would probably be at least a dozen shows that I was just like, I guess I never made it to Outer Range. Oh well, it's not. I
Yeah.
guess it's not going to
Just
happen.
won't.
There's a lot of those, and so maybe it's kind of hard to say if I'm not a professional television critic who actually watches all these that are doing something completely original, but it feels like it. It feels new. It feels fresh. It feels like something I'm not seeing anywhere else.
Yeah.
If
Even
I'm
if it's not,
wrong, I'm wrong.
even if it's not absolutely unique, it feels
It's,
different.
yeah.
Like, and it's maybe not innovating on the level of like inventing bullet time like the Matrix did,
No,
but it is doing things in its own unique way. Breaking Bad's a great, I think, point of reference that you brought up there. That, yeah, Breaking Bad just leaned into a little more impressionism than
mm-hmm.
like straight up action choreography a lot of the time, and that's what Barry, I think, does that, and it feels exciting to me each time when it actually some
Yeah.
sort of action sequence starts up and we stick with one person's perspective. Like I said, sometimes it's that Chechen guy holding the FaceTime. In the finale of this season, they do the whole, thing from NoHo Hank's perspective, where he doesn't see anything. It's
The
all just
insane
sound. The
David
dirty
Lynch,
work
like,
homage.
just interesting that you think. I get what you mean. Too.
That's exactly what I thought of the entire time. I was
Very,
like, they're doing the gag from Dirty Work, but like almost dramatically.
I was thinking of like Jacob's Ladder at that scene, but they both kind of do exist in that. Yeah, what a weird scene. What a baffling, effective scene. The entire NoHo Hank sequence in the finale is. It's that doesn't. What show does that belong on? And I guess the only answer is something like Barry, where you really can just do insane shit like that week to
It's
week.
like there or Twin Peaks are the only places I could see something like that
I felt some
playing out.
Twin Peaks in this too, like
Yeah.
or well, I mean that was probably the biggest Twin Peaks moment, but the weird Barry afterlife visions when they weren't reminding me of
Yeah.
Sopranos, there was a little Twin Peaks in there too.
Yeah. Well, Sopranos owes something to Twin Peaks and its dream sequences. The way, I mean, any show that did dream sequences kind of owes something to Twin Peaks in the last 25, 30 years. But I also thought there's something about the where Cristobal is strapped to the chair and he's sort of being tormented by this dancing, you know, temptress of a male stripper that's also like jumping over to play the piano at different times. Like that felt somewhat Lynchian to me, because
very,
especially with
very.
it all being subtitled Spanish, so we kind of know what they're saying, but not really. Granted, in a proper Lynch production, there would have been more strobe lights there, and he would have been talking in backwards Norwegian.
Oh, that could have been a Wild at Heart scene. I mean, it's very, very odd. The entire that whole plot line with the gay conversion kind of electroshock stuff that they just sort of spring on you at the end, and just like, oh yeah, I guess that follows. I guess that is a natural place for this to flow from what we've seen before of this relationship. So yeah, it's man, like they've earned all of these moments is the thing. None of it's completely out of left field, although the panther or whatever the fucking monster in the cell that was a little bit maybe. But for the most part, I think everything they put the groundwork into, and I don't know. You're talking me into thinking this is a stronger season of television than I had originally thought. Maybe.
The other thing I liked about that Panther thing, by the way, is just how it contrasts with later in the episode where we see another character beating an attacker to death in a sound booth that we stay outside of, so that we have this one act of horrific violence that we only hear the sound of and don't get to see, and one where we don't hear any sound and only see, like, we don't even see all of it, but we just see swinging the bat over and over, and giving it, we can tell, as a very intense raw performance there, but just with the sound cut off.
Yeah. Yeah, that's director stuff.
Hmm.
That's yeah, that's devised very cleverly. The whole thing. Look, we can catalog the influences and stuff, but I think it is that only serves to undercut that this does feel like it's really, really. I don't know what the word is. I keep coming back to fresh, and this just feels like it's an innovative thing. It feels like everything it's doing is original. This is a very unpredictable season of television. Like no idea where
Definitely.
this was headed at any point. I had predictions; they were way wrong, and I mean, I don't think it's 100% successful, but it's swinging so hard. It's trying so much, and in this what 8 episodes, half hour each format, like, and that it's more cohesive than a lot of other things that you would watch longer versions of. It's amazing. It's a very strong show, and I have no idea where they're going with it.
And it never seems like it stops moving forward.
Yeah.
Um, that's the other thing. It doesn't. I don't think I know that I've ever seen an episode of Barry I thought was really wheel spinning. I mean, I guess like you go back to last season where there was like an entire episode where Barry had to do one hit and he gets. Turns out it's a guy who's like a judo master or something. So it's a little harder than he thought. And then he gets into the whole cat and mouse thing with the guy's daughter is like haunting him like some sort of revenant. But
But narratively, it doesn't move forward. Yeah.
no, but that's also the best episode of the whole series
Yeah.
by most people's estimation.
It is an isolated story within the narrative that does, I guess. Yeah, I mean, you're in one place at the end that you weren't at the beginning, but for the most part, it is a standalone thing. It's not a bottle episode because it is an extremely expensive one, and
Yeah, it's
but
going.
it's it's an episode in the way that like old shows had, episodes that weren't part of the narrative necessarily. That they kind of functioned as their own story with a beginning, middle, end that you almost never see in these days now.
Well, it's not a thing where it's actually a one take
No,
episode
no,
where
no,
like
no,
the entire thing, but it's sort of like a we just stay with him in almost real time throughout
no.
the like we're not cutting away to things, we're not jumping forward in time, we're just starting here and then complication and following it directly through without any breaks is what it feels like until the very end.
This stuff is good. This is the show. I think that this is the best thing about the show is this stuff that it does. This sort of experimental, almost I would say, stuff with its sequences. Because you know, even as I thought this season didn't have the most cohesive narrative, individual sequences throughout, fantastic. We've mentioned a lot of them already. The bike chase,
Yeah.
the Panther into gay conversion sequence, the Michael Ironside Zoom call. All these are tremendous, but they do kind of get plucked out of the whole to be tremendous.
I do want to throw in there one of my favorite like dark like blackly comic sex pieces ever. It's like a perfect like post Tarantino crime comedy stuff is Barry having to call customer service to troubleshoot the app he's using to detonate the bomb that
Yeah,
he's trying to wipe out a gang with. Just
yeah,
fantastic stuff.
all that's a lot of fun. Um, I will say, since we're getting into this now, the third
What's the
season.
worst thing about the show? You said that was the best thing.
Yeah,
What's the worst thing?
okay, I'm getting into. I think it's lost a big part of its identity as a narrative. I think now. Uh, I thought that the first and second season, where it really is an actor wants to, or an assassin wants to be an actor, the silly prompt that sounds like a bad show. They did a really good job of that show. They did an exceptional job of telling the story of an assassin who wants to be an actor. And they kind of look into what it means to be an assassin, why someone would be an assassin, what that does to a soul. And at the same time, they looked at what being an actor gives him. Like, what is it about that appeals to him? And it's not just as simple as a community. He actually has a sense of artistic fulfillment that is sort of something he didn't realize was something that he needed in the first 2 seasons. The Henry Winkler character is kind of a ridiculous character, but he's not a
Kind of.
joke. Yeah, well, everyone's kind of a ridiculous character on this show, but he is legitimately good at teaching acting is the thing. He is not a joke in and of himself. And
Is he? I haven't seen the first season in a while. I don't remember if he was initially presented that way.
I think he
It
is
seems like he's.
benefiting these people. Like, and I think we're meant to understand he is a good actor and a good teacher. I do believe
Yeah,
that.
I guess
Yeah.
that's true.
And it certainly is working in Barry's case. It certainly is helping him come out and realize what he actually is inside and what he wants, and finding some sort of spiritual fulfillment through art is kind of what the show was about to me. And I loved that. And I thought that was an incredible way to go about this. And they were very perceptive about how, like, Los Angeles cliches and how ridiculous some of these students are, and, you know, doing scenes from True Romance in acting class, stuff like that. That's all fun, and fun at their expense, and it's good. But at the bottom of it, it's serious about acting. It's serious about what people find fulfilling about it, why they want to be actors, and it's not always for the best reasons. Certainly
It
get into
is.
that in the
Well,
Sally stuff, but it's perceptive. It's that and a crime show at the same time. So that's what I loved about season 1 and 2, that they kind of, I don't know, one could say they had to move beyond that. I think they kind of just abandoned it.
I suppose the show does posit that there is a certain like emptiness that behooves a person going into either acting or assassinating. That if you have this, you can kind of fill it with a character that you're channeling, or it also allows you to become a weapon that the U.S. military can point at its enemies, or I guess Stephen Root can point at his enemies to destroy them.
Well, you know, it is. It's similar kind of impulses that are, you know, there are ways to deal with it. You know, ways to process what you're feeling, and one is through self-expression, and one is through being a useful tool of the U.S. government.
And annihilation of other people, or annihilation of the self, I guess, is, you know, the highest form of acting.
The other part is he's good at it, though. Like, these are both things that or well, he's better at killing than acting, but he has an aptitude for it, and that's why he does it, which is another.
Yeah, he's good at acting. He's a savant at killing.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, key to the whole anti-hero thing that we talked about, that you know, the anti-hero being a savant at whatever terrible thing they're doing is part of what draws us to them. Just how much we as audience members love watching somebody be good at what they do.
So the initial idea here, the initial, like, certainly through the first season and into the second season, I feel like there was a play at, you know, there was some play at work, like, does this man have a soul? Like, is this man redeemable? Is this is there anything to him beyond just sort of this empty killer that, you know, that he has been through his life in the military, and now with his career with Fuchs? Is him trying to find something inside himself worth a damn? And I think it was an open question whether that existed or not. He killed nobody through the second season. Like, in the entire season, he kills absolutely nobody. He's trying to quit, and then he has a lapse and fall and in the final episode, and a binge, and kills, I don't know, I forget how many, at least 20 people in one sequence, and then after that, I feel like the show's central question has resolved in a way, and the answer is no. He's done. He's ruined. Like, too many sins, too much accumulated time. He's without saving, you know, an anti-hero in the sense, like, well, and now as a result, we're just into an anti-hero show. We're just going to do anti-hero stuff now. And obviously there's other cool stuff they can do in the margins of that, just as, you know, just as any of the Albuquerque crime shows do. But it's more familiar. This
is interesting to me because I think it just, you've now clarified for me what our difference is on this most recent season, because I had known that you were not as into it as I was, and I found that odd, because we tend to be pretty simpatico in a lot of our tastes, especially as something like this would seem to be.
Yes, it's still a very good show. It's still a very good show. I don't dislike this show. I just think this is my least favorite season, I think.
But it seems it revolves around the fact that the show has sort of moved past the acting class element of it.
Yeah.
And for you, that's losing something. For me, that was moving away from the thing I liked the least. Now, you also raised a good point there, that maybe the second season answered the question about whether Barry was redeemable. And I think the third season has actually done an interesting job of looking at, okay, what if the answer is no, but he's still moving forward? What is that? What does that look like? And with this, like, the Fuchs thing of getting all the revenge seekers to sick on him, and how that there's this sort of comedy of errors of all these amateurs trying to go after him, and how
Kind
they're
of.
kind of taking themselves out without Barry doing much about them, other than the motocross bikers. He has to do, you know, some shooting and driving to get away from them. But like you said, the mother and son kind of rue themselves. The dad that finds him
Yeah.
and ends up killing himself instead of uh, and leaving Barry at the ER after he's been poisoned by somebody else, like another person who kind of fucks up their revenge thing, and then
Hmm.
going up to finally, you know, they have set up. I guess that it turns out they've set up two sort of actually competent, dangerous, justified potential, like, you know, figures of not vengeance but justice coming
Well,
after Barry. And
Bunny Colvin,
yeah,
and is the
well,
one they're
and
building
Albert,
to all
his
season. Yeah.
and Albert, the, you know, his former
Right.
army buddy that is now an FBI agent,
I
and
forgot about him.
that he corners Barry and then lets him off the hook in a way that would feel very bullshitty to me on Dexter, where
Yeah.
I feel like that, even having given up on that show halfway through, they have played the card a couple of times. We're like, oh no, this person found out Dexter's horrible secret, but it turns out they're actually okay with it, and like that's
Hmm.
the twist there. And it's like, okay, but that's not really like a believable character thing or whatever. It's just you know, they go, here's how we get another season out of this show is he's been
Yeah.
found out. Oh no, but it's okay because they're fine. Also, they'll be dead 2 episodes from now.
Yeah. That was
And
wash, rinse, repeat on Dexter. That's every season, pretty much. Yeah.
so the Albert thing kind of is rinsing and repeating that, except here they set up the not the forgiving Jeff thing in the beginning in that same space, that, you
Yeah.
know, sort of purgatorial space. And because they've gone through all those things before, we're like, yeah, Barry keeps getting bailed out without like his really not always understanding what's going on or having to do much. It becomes this thing of he's weirdly lucky, but he's damned because of that. Like there's part of him that wants to be punished, and he is like suffering more and more. You know, he's desperate to try and get Henry Winkler's character to forgive him or to help him, and he's successful in sort of strong arming him into going, like, at least forgiving him on paper, you know, and
Yeah.
going on with it. And that doesn't make him feel any better. And that he is in this, if not hell, limbo space. You know, he can't help but try and like evade the noose or like seek redemption in some form, but doesn't think that he can be actually forgiven or redeemed. You know, he looks devastated when Albert tells him, "No, I know you're a good guy. And you guys got to stop this starting now," which was a thing from the first season. But
Hmm.
but they've put him in this weird purgatorial space that it seems very deliberate to me. Um,
Yeah. I mean, he's been reactive, I think, beyond trying to get Gene Cousineau a job. You know, in the early parts of the season, he's been extremely reactive to everything that is coming his way. Uh, the Fuchs army and such. It's made him feel, I don't know, less like he's had a real story. But I guess it does have. I mean, it's happening. It is. It's all kind of like he's realizing the extent to which he's fucked, I guess. And
yeah, the
uh,
dream beach thing, you know, is
yeah.
kind of realizing how it
Hmm.
is. And I mean, is this not just the process of Barry becoming a truly great actor? Because isn't great acting reacting?
I mean, that's fuck. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, if that is
No,
the
that's
arc.
bullshit. I don't believe that at all.
No,
Just say
if
it.
if this is the arc, if that what you just said is the arc, I'll be very happy though. There's a thing. Like if him like going, I guess he's going to jail now, or some sort of trial season or something. They have a plan.
Yeah.
Clearly, I've heard them talking about true crime is kind of the inspiration for what's coming next. Okay, if the
Yeah,
result of
I
this
saw
is
an interview with
him,
Hader where he
yeah,
said that sort of true crime
hmm,
was part of inspiration for this, and he thinks of it as a big Vanity Fair article. So that, to his mind, I mean, like the question that was being posed to him was like, "Isn't this the end of the show if he's going to jail?" type of thing. And he's like, "Well, no. Like I don't really know how it's going to end, but I always envisioned there being like a part of this after he got caught
yeah,
or exposed." So, and I think, you know, from a strictly like plot perspective, like, yeah, you can. He's got defenses, legal defenses. He can put to this, that he is recovering from being poisoned, and he was gaslit and confused by his mentor lying to him about what the actual circumstances were, what this guy was going to do. He's also been previously quote unquote falsely accused of these crimes that you know
Mm-hmm.
Bunny Colvin was accusing him of before. I think Johnny Cochran could get him off here, or at least get him out on bail during these proceedings. Especially because he's got PTSD, veteran stuff, sympathies he can play on. Anyway,
I mean, if this is all leading to him finding incredible use and value of his newfound acting abilities, I mean that's kind of something. That's
that'll be
that's kind
something.
of interesting. Yeah, because
Well,
it is about. I mean, yeah, playing to a trial, playing to the media, playing a role once you're on trial for something like this.
well,
How
we'll
do
see
you
what the next
want to
season
be seen?
brings
Yeah.
us, because we've
Hmm.
never. I mean, I've never had a sense of what the next season would bring before. Like a
No.
little stronger this time than prior seasons, where I was really like, I have no idea where you go from here. Here, there's like at least there's some cliffhanger stuff here that you kind of have to deal with, and I don't know how they'll do it, but that's going to
Hmm.
take up a lot of the focus, at least. The other part I wanted to circle back to talking about was the acting stuff is part and parcel of what I was saying was my least favorite stuff before, and what made this seem like it had the potential to be completely insufferable.
Hmm.
The blending, like, oh, we're gonna do an anti-hero cool crime show thing, but also we're gonna do some inside baseball Hollywood satire, which tends to be
Yeah.
fucking deadly crappy to me. And this show had, well, the acting stuff in the early seasons was not my favorite part of the show by any means, but largely this show has made the Hollywood satire stuff work better for me than almost any other version of that in other media does. um and it's
They know what they're
I
talking
think,
about. Clearly, they
yeah,
have
but
people in mind. I feel like for all these archetypes.
I don't think that's always a plus for this type of thing,
Fair
because the
enough. Yeah.
bad versions of this also have people in mind and axes to grind. About Birdman, certainly he
Hmm.
knew what theater critic he was getting vicarious revenge on, and it's fucking brutal for that to watch. So, but the thing about this, the bad version of Hollywood satire, I feel like,
Hmm.
is that it's it's trying to present itself as, oh, we're not taking ourselves so seriously. We are self-aware and taking ourselves down a peg or whatever, except it's still this very myopic thing. It's like aggrandizing thing of, well, but obviously nothing could be more like, yeah, sure. Murder for hire and PTSD are interesting, but the politics of auditioning for pilot season are the really interesting thing, right?
Hmm.
Uh, and and the other way to do that is that there's a version of Hollywood satire where it's, the studios and the executives are the villains, and you certainly get that with the Banshee stuff and Sally in this season.
A little, a little.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
but the
yeah.
bad version of it is that the creatives, the writers and the actors are the sort of noble artists suffering under the yoke of these corporate overlords. And I think Barry has a much better perspective on how a lot of even the lower level artists are just as full of shit and self-centered and
Yeah, you said
myopic
myopic. Yeah.
as
Hmm.
yeah
It's
as anybody at the higher levels.
yeah, 100%. And I love that I think that's my favorite part about season 3, honestly, is the Sally plot line, which is surprising. But
So it's very
it's
good for me. Like,
yeah.
not my favorite character throughout the first two seasons. Suddenly, very sympathetic to me in this season.
Yeah.
Um,
A very well-rounded, like complete character at this point, like good and bad, both sides. It's really good. I It's an actress I didn't quite cotton to the first two seasons. I think she's exceptional in this one. And everything they did with her I thought was great. And they give her some form of dignity as well. I really liked that. Like it's not a one-sided thing at all. It is a complex character, and
yeah,
everything that happens to her, some of it is bullshit, some of it is deserved, and it's really astute in portraying her.
Yeah, they're not
Yeah.
begging you to sympathize with her either.
No.
Like,
Hmm.
um, it's
Which
almost
it makes
a
me
little bit of
sympathize
the
with her
arc of.
more. Yeah.
Yeah, of course it does. That's how it
Yeah.
always works, and it's a little bit of the arc they went through with Britta on Community, where
Yeah. Yeah.
initially she is sort of the hot blonde girl that the hero is trying to romance, and you know that he's a flawed, interesting guy, but so she's a little bit more of like a paragon, but as it goes on and we start the show starts treating her worse. I start feeling so much more sympathetic to her, and then and
Hmm.
liking her better. So I'm like, oh yeah, you're going through it like everybody, like.
Yeah.
And
Giving her like demonstrable flaws and showing them kind of like exist within this person in a way that makes sense. Yeah. Surprise, surprise, makes her feel a lot more relatable. Makes her
yeah,
be a lot more interesting to watch. Much more interesting as a character than she has been. And all that stuff. I am kind of deliciously uncertain how to feel about all of it. Like uh, the Joplin show she was doing. Like I'm fascinated by that show. It seems like sort of a Gilmore Girls thing, sort of a Romana Clef takedown of her mom. Uh, I kind of like knowing the exact amount that we do know about it, which is not much, but certainly a lot is implied. I guess it's just over forever now, but like it was great
I don't know.
stuff.
I think it's gonna actually. I think next season they'll find a way to bring it back. But I don't know. Well, I don't want to speculate too much on next season because I'll probably be wrong, and also I think there's other stuff to talk about. But
Mhm.
like that a big part of this season too with that her whole storyline with Joplin, and it was all so hyper accelerated.
Yeah,
Uh, like
yeah.
that's part of that the show never stops moving forward thing,
Hmm.
and I think that it went so far this season, like it got to almost cartoonish levels of how fast like the roller coaster of that was going up to the very tippy top and down within like 12 hours of time, and they made a point of that. Uh, but something about that, like one, if that had been that could have been drug out over 2 seasons.
Hmm.
The
Oh,
highs to the
easily. You
lows.
could do an entire season or show about that. That could be an entire show.
Yeah,
Is
but
but
it made it also harder for me to get just bored and bogged down, because if I start feeling a little bored in the Hollywood stuff, I can turn on it quickly, as I've established. And feel like, oh, woe is me or whatever. But I don't know, it's moving so fast there that one, I feel like it gives additional whiplash to the character that I feel more sympathetic to her. So like, yeah, that does suck, and
and
it's a little cartoonishly heightened. Like, yeah, I'm not. I mean, I think I'm somewhat cynical about how Hollywood politics work, but it seems insane to me that they took the show down after half a day when they got all the accolades in the world initially. It's
Mhm.
like I don't have a hard time believing that people at Netflix or wherever like are too slavish to the algorithm and like jump the gun on making that type of decision, but it seems fucking ludicrous and self-defeating to me that you think all the costs of that show are sunk already, and you have some indicators that maybe it's not going to catch on, but also it's got all the praise in the world and it's going to win some awards for you, and that's got to be part of what you're aiming for. Like, make it at least more worth thinking a little more into that show to turn it around than starting from scratch, like just as a mercenary business decision. That struck me as ludicrous, but
I mean,
whatever.
it's satire,
Of
to some
course,
extent. It's super
it's
heightened, and
satire with a
yeah,
capital S.
yeah.
That's my big complaint with a lot of Hollywood inside baseball stuff.
I mean, I do love that, but we can get you a job in the writers' room on this. It's like Sex in the City, but with Medusas. Like that's, that's great.
It did just turn into
I,
BoJack Horseman for one episode there with
yes.
their, which is the other Hollywood satire I really love. God, BoJack Horseman. We talked
Mhm.
when we started this podcast, like the second episode. From there onward, spitballing what can we do outside of our main thing? What other episodes can we do? And I was saying BoJack Horseman right from the start. Like, that's, I think, one of the most underrated shows of the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's
One of my
probably due
absolute
for a
favorites.
reappraisal by people. It's an excellent show. It's kind of outrageously good. Yeah.
And for the same reason, I think that it doesn't
Mhm.
cut the creatives any slack. That the writers on that show and the actors are just as shitty as
Oh,
the executives. Like,
enormous. Yeah, knives out for the creatives on that show, big time. That's
yeah,
what's
yeah,
good
yeah.
about it. Yeah, Uh,
Genuinely self
yeah.
like lacerating, as opposed to the, oh, we're having, I'll make a joke at my own expense, but also I'm the fucking hero of this piece, and
Hmm.
the real villains are the people trying to stymie me. Um,
It's the best show about the cultural shift in Hollywood that occurred while it was on the air too.
yeah, it dealt that very well.
Like it was
This
in,
season of Barry also dealing with that stuff pretty well.
yeah,
You know how Sally
yeah.
goes. I mean, in the span of one episode, from being
Hmm.
a sort of Me Too hero to a Me Too villain on a small scale.
Hmm. Well, the Henry
I
Winkler
mean,
stuff felt a little more schematic, a little more just like, well, he's a problematic, toxic guy, and that's never actually been established on the show, I don't think, but it's just sort of like understood shorthand. It's like, well, yeah, he was a dick or something to people back in the day, and that's why
yeah,
he's ruined. That was a little less inspired, I think. Um,
yeah, and I didn't fully buy that. Gene Cousineau, as played by Henry Winkler, was ever this like violently toxic.
right?
As
Yeah,
like I could buy that he was like a dick of a certain stripe, but not necessarily that he was assaulting,
yeah. Joe
PAs or
Mantegna
whatever.
has a restraining order against him.
Yeah, I just it was a little like I wasn't buying he was that assertive, like ever.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, they were treating him like he was BoJack Horseman, actually,
Yeah,
and it's just Henry Winkler. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's he's still. I'm glad he's on the show. I like that character. I like
Mhm.
every character really. I think the cast is exceptional. Even if when they're adrift, they still somehow manage to rise above and bring it into an entertaining thing. Like NoHo Hank this year, for example.
Yeah,
Uh,
we got to wrap this
yeah,
up, but let's take a
yeah.
couple minutes to just NoHo Hank is one of the somehow we have not talked about like hardly at all in the last 45 minutes,
Mhm.
but I think one of the best comic creations of the last decade or two.
I mean,
Just
it's just the guy, right? It's just the actor is funny. I mean, that's really all there
yes,
is to it. It's just a very
he is this
appealing
unique
comic.
guy. Well, they found a really unique context to put to me. He was like
Yeah.
clearly like kind of a funny guy with a weird but affable vibe, and that's probably pretty funny on its own. But you put him in the Chechen mob, and it becomes like 8 times funnier immediately. You know?
Yeah, you look forward to him every season or every episode. He's barely in this season. It felt like not really, but I
Well,
mean, a
no,
lot of
he's in
shit
the
went
season,
down
but
with
he's
him.
off on he's in his own show the entire season, is what it felt like.
Yeah,
Not that he wasn't there, but just that he was so disconnected from everything else, and yet he's such a strong character that I'm just like, well, I'm not mad, even
hmm.
though this stuff doesn't feel like it matters that much.
Yeah.
I
You
don't
need
know
him
that
on the show.
nothing that important is going to happen in Bolivia.
No, I mean, I don't know. It's a character that they could kill at any time, I suppose, but aren't going to because he's so clearly one of the best parts of the show.
Yeah, I mean, I would say maybe that would be a problem. Like, oh, it's a fan favorite, so you can't kill him, and that's like a lame thing that shows get too in love with it. But also, like, no, don't kill this guy. He's
Yeah.
talking about unique creations. Talking about a character type that like does not exist on any other show. I can't go anywhere else to get a NoHo Hank type. I can go to another show and get a Barry type.
I think NoHo Hank would fit in just fine on Fargo.
Yeah, but he hasn't so far. He hasn't been there so far. Maybe it's season 5. We'll see.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Anything else about this season of Barry that we need to mention? Anything? I mean, I feel like we covered a lot of it here.
We did.
Is there
I
anywhere
think.
you want to? We even talked about where it's going next and how we're kind of loath to predict that because it's going to surprise us, and that's part of the fun anyway.
Yeah,
So
I'm willing to go wherever Hader wants to take it. I
yeah,
think he's earned a lot of trust from me at this point. Um, and like I said, my biggest concern about a show of this type is that it would go up its own ass with the Hollywood satire stuff, and they have maneuvered around that very deftly, I thought. And
so far so good. Yeah.
yeah,
I
doesn't
think
seem
it's
like
because they take it seriously. I think it's because they take their artistic lives of the characters seriously.
yeah, but not in a self-aggrandizing way. It's not.
Right.
It's serious because it's what people decide to do with their lives,
They're still
and it's
ridiculous. Yes.
yeah, it's a little skeptical that Joplin can actually change the world, or that that the artist's goals like they're a little ridiculous. Gene Cousineau
Mhm.
obviously is a ridiculous character.
Right. One last question before we're done here.
Okay.
Righteous Gemstones season 2 versus Barry season 3.
Uh, Barry season 3. Well, just Barry over Righteous Gemstones, but it's pretty close for me.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's just I've seen several Danny McBride shows already, and I
Right.
feel like this is the first Barry I've seen.
Fair enough. I picked Gemstones. Yeah, okay. But similarly, they're real close.
Well, there's a lot of like weirdly cartoonishly brazen biker gangs, just totally cool with spraying machine gun fire into traffic in public over relatively small slights.
How it's like they're having a conversation with each other. Yeah. Also, like the action scenes that have sort of a reality to them where everything goes wrong. Another Gemstone thing. Like all their action scenes are just like stupid people do things on accident, and it causes the house to explode, and their head to get caught on fire.
Gemstones to me, it feels more like they're just explicitly channeling, like telling each other, okay, this is a Coen Brothers thing we're doing. Whereas Barry is putting a little more of a twist on it, to my mind, with at least like the cinematography of how they're shooting these sequences.
That's true, but I don't know if the Coen brothers would have a scene where characters tried to duplicate the end of Young Guns and end up getting killed because of
it. That was a pretty great, just like plant and payoff within the course of like 2 minutes at the very end of an entire. It's like the temptation must have been there to have put something in like the first 5 minutes of the premiere of that season to lay in the Young Guns thing, but they made it work so wonderfully. Just
they just trust
all in the
you
course
to know
of
Young
one
Guns,
scene.
Yeah.
Well, you see them watching it like right before, but like it's all in the span of a thing that could have been or maybe was a post credits scene. I don't remember if it was an actual post credits scene or not, but it definitely could have been.
Yeah. All right, that's it for Barry. We'll watch the next season. If it's at all interesting, we'll talk about it again. And that's that. Thank you, Al. All right, thanks for listening.